Have you ever wondered what happens when a golden age ends? We all know the stories of legendary rulers like Mansa Musa, the richest man in history, whose pilgrimage to Mecca was so extravagant it literally changed the economy of every city he passed through. His Mali Empire was a beacon of wealth, culture, and power in the 14th century. But every story has an ending, and the story of the Mali Empire is no exception. Today, we're not talking about the glittering peak. We're journeying to the twilight, to uncover the tale of the last man to hold the title of Mansa, the last king of a fading dynasty. This isn't just a story about decline. It's a story of struggle, ambition, and the relentless march of time. Who was this final ruler? What challenges did he face? And how did one of the world's greatest empires finally crumble into the dust of history? Stick with me as we unravel the mystery of the last king of the Mali Empire. To understand the end, we must first appreciate the beginning. Imagine an empire stretching across West Africa, larger than Western Europe itself. Its capital, Niamey, and other cities like Timbuktu and Gao were world-renowned centers of learning, trade, and art. Scholars, poets, and architects flocked to Timbuktu's Sankara University. Caravans laden with gold, salt, and ivory crossed the Sahara, making Mali the undisputed economic powerhouse of its time. This was the empire built by the legendary Sundiata Keita and brought to its zenith by Mansa Musa. For over a century, the title of Mansa, meaning King of Kings, was the most prestigious in the land. It represented immense power, divine right, and a direct link to a glorious past. But by the late 16th century, the luster of that title had begun to fade. The empire was a shadow of its former self, weakened by internal strife, succession disputes, and the rise of powerful new states on its borders. The once mighty lion was growing old. So, who was the man at the helm during this final, turbulent chapter? History points to Mansa Mahmud Keita, for his name might not ring with the same glory as Mansa Musa's, but his story is arguably just as compelling. He inherited not a golden throne, but a burning one. By the time Mahmud IV came to power around 1590, the Mali Empire was in critical condition. The wealthy trading cities of Timbuktu and Gao had already been seized by the expanding Songhai Empire. The Wolof people had broken away to the west. To the south, new powers were emerging. The empire had shrunk dramatically, essentially reduced to its original Mandinka heartland. Mahmud IV wasn't ruling a continent-spanning power. He was the king of a beleaguered state, desperately trying to hold on to its identity and its last vestiges of authority. He was a man fighting against the tide of history itself. The greatest threat Mahmud IV faced came from the north. In 1591, a pivotal event shook West Africa to its core: the invasion of the Songhai Empire by the Saudi dynasty of Morocco. The Moroccans, armed with modern firearms arquebuses, shattered the Songhai army at the Battle of Tondibi. This created a massive power vacuum. While the Songhai Empire, Mali's longtime rival, was now collapsing, the situation was far from a blessing for Mahmud. The Moroccan forces, known as the Arma, established control over the crucial Niger Bend, including the vital trade centers of Timbuktu and Djen. For Mahmud IV, this was both a crisis and an opportunity. He saw a chance to reclaim what had been lost, to push back against the invaders and perhaps restore some of Mali's former glory. He decided he had to act. In 1599, Mansa Mahmud IV made his final desperate gamble. He gathered what remained of his army and marched on the city of Djen. This wasn't just a raid. It was a symbolic attempt to reclaim a crown jewel of the old empire. Djen was a wealthy hub of trade and Islamic scholarship, and recapturing it would have been a massive morale boost and a strategic victory. Mahmud hoped to rally local support, believing that the people of Djen would prefer the rule of a familiar Moulin Mausa over foreign Moroccan conquerors. His forces laid siege to the city, hoping to starve out the Arma garrison. This was it. This was the moment that would decide the fate of the Keita dynasty and the legacy of the Mali Empire. The stage was set for a climactic confrontation. The Battle of Djen was a clash of two different worlds. On one side, you had Mansa Mahmud IV's army, a traditional force likely composed of cavalry, and infantry armed with spears and bows, the kind of army that had dominated West Africa for centuries. On the other side, you had the Moroccan Arma, a smaller but technologically superior force. Their secret weapon was gunpowder. When Mahmud's forces charged, they were met not with arrows and spears, but with the thunderous roar and deadly efficiency of firearms. The result was a catastrophe for the Malians. Their traditional tactics were no match for the new technology of war. The army was routed, suffering a devastating defeat. Mahmud IV was forced to retreat, his hopes of reclaiming Djen and reviving his empire shattered. This defeat wasn't just a military loss, it was a psychological blow. It signaled the definitive end of an era. The old ways of the great cavalry empires were no longer enough to rule West Africa. After the disastrous defeat at Djen, the Mali Empire effectively ceased to exist as a unified state. Mansa Mahmud IV retreated back to his capital Niamey, but his authority was broken. The dream of a restored empire died on that battlefield. Following his death around 1610, what was left of the empire disintegrated completely. His sons, instead of uniting, carved up the remaining territory into their own personal chiefdoms. There was no longer a central Mansa. The magnificent tapestry of the empire had unraveled into a collection of loose threads. The title Mansa, once a name that commanded respect across the known world, now belonged to history. The last king was gone, and with him, the last breath of one of history's most awe-inspiring empires. The lion had finally fallen silent. So what is the legacy of Mahmud IV and the fall of Mali? It's easy to see him as a failure, the king who presided over the final collapse, but that's too simple. He was a man born into an impossible situation, facing challenges his glorious ancestors could never have imagined. He fought with the tools he had against the unstoppable forces of technological change and shifting political landscapes. His story is a powerful reminder that all empires, no matter how great, eventually face their twilight. It also highlights the dramatic impact of military technology, how a few hundred guns could dismantle a centuries-old imperial tradition. The fall of Mali wasn't just the end of a dynasty. It was the end of an entire age for West Africa, paving the way for a new, more fragmented, and uncertain future. The story of the Mali Empire doesn't end in complete darkness. However, its cultural legacy is immense and enduring. The traditions, the music of the griots, the epic of Sundiata, and the scholarly heritage of Timbuktu continued to resonate today. The memory of the Mansas, from the all-powerful Sundiata and Musa to the tragic Mahmud IV, lives on in the oral histories and the collective identity of millions in West Africa. Mahmud IV's story is the final, poignant chapter in this epic tale, a cautionary story about the fragility of power, the inevitability of change, and the courage of one man fighting a losing battle against the tide of history. His name may be lost to popular memory, but his struggle marks the very moment the sun finally set on the golden empire of Mali. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. It's a fascinating and humbling story, isn't it? If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure into the past. What piece of history should we explore next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.